We're working with challenging authority figures and doing that from our adult self. So let's just take a moment here to bring ourselves into that. What comes up for you in your thoughts as we're looking at these pictures, too? There's a picture of the Supreme Court in the US. So the recent overturning of Roe v. Wade and all of those different decisions that are happening and likely to happen in the future as well. There's systemic racism in this case, with this one with a person of color has a partial brick wall in their way. The other person has blue skies and clouds. A person with a white body. We have an example of an adult scolding or yelling at a child. So these kinds of authority figures, there's a bunch of them. The red light is meant to represent the agreements that we make with each other as people in towns and villages and in countries and internationally. We have a lot of different agreements about how we're going to manage ourselves so that we can cooperate. And traffic safety is highly effective because most people stop at red lights. It's our signal to know what to do. So I thought about we could use a bit of an example here just to kind of get ourselves into the mode. And then when we go into the actual inquiry, you might use something like this, or you might use something different. So talking to a doctor is somewhat intimidating for many of us. Often it's because there's something going on with our health. In our culture, there's a real top-down approach by many, not all doctors, of we're not partners, I'm the authority. And I know what's good for you. And I also have a lot of opinions on whether or not you'll follow my advice. And so there can be a real patriarchal, father knows best kind of an interaction. And of course, that's not true of all doctors. We know that. So when we're thinking about this, just to use it as an example, if you have to talk with your doctor about something that's going on with your health, maybe you want to have an x-ray and they're reluctant to, or you don't know what they're going to do. So what is your normal kind of go-to strategy? Do you go into a fawning response? You're super nice. You try to convince them. Do you kind of get demanding with them, more of a fight response? This is what I need and you need to give it to me. You have the power to do this and I'm not going to take no for an answer. Do you kind of play on your sympathy, on their sympathy? Is it more of a, I really need your help, doctor, and I just don't know what to do, and I know you do, and that's kind of a fawning, kind of a sympathetic victim kind of a strategy. Or if you're in more of a flight response, you might forget to make an appointment. So it's important as we're looking at, and you could think of some different examples of when you're negotiating with an authority. What are your kind of go-tos in the past and now? It's important not to shame ourselves for that because we're looking at strategies largely that developed when we were children and we were negotiating with our parents or teachers. And when we look at our strategies and inquire into it, what we're really doing is looking to see what might be coming through from our childhood experiences that actually isn't even necessary anymore. How could we approach this from a more grounded, I'm a participant in this approach? One thing we know about the nervous system is that there's an unconscious perception of threat that's highly influenced by our past. And it's also really influenced by the attitude of the person that we're working with as well. So my doctor that I have now is very cooperative, collaborative. I really feel like we're a partnership. She has a lot of knowledge that I don't have. And she has that authority. And I also have a lot of knowledge about my own body and what I'm willing and likely to do. And it's my life. So the decisions that I make them with her advice in mind. And sometimes I follow it. And mostly I follow it. Sometimes I don't. So when we treat each other with this kind of respect for ourselves and the other person as adults, we have the best chance of a good outcome. Let's take a pause for a moment here. And let an example come to mind. Notice your body, your breath. Think of an example of where somebody had authority to affect your life, either good or bad. And what was your response? And then come into that grounded, I'm actually an adult. I have some agency in the situation. Let's go into the inquiry now. So, based on what we've just been kind of looking into, bring to mind an authority that activates some kind of anxiety or fear response. And the example with a medical person is a good one in some ways because it's not just their authority that we might be nervous about. It's also we might not want to hear bad news. We might be scared about what they might be telling us. If we're getting lab results back and we go in, it's like, well, they don't call you in for the good results, so what's happening? Or it might be something that's a lot more serious. It might be something that we really are keen to find out more about so that we can take action. So there's all kinds of different environments as well as the person that we're dealing with. But bring to mind some authority, whether it's in your present life or maybe in your past, that just thinking about it activates a bit of a fear response in you. And then right away we get grounded. So you could remind yourself, I'm not in trouble. Even though that person might not approve of me, even though they might be taking some kind of action, I'm not in trouble in the sense that I'm helpless or the way I might have been as a child. If you are in trouble, like I was thinking several years ago, I got pulled over for speeding. I was in trouble. However, I am an adult and I know that I didn't actually know that I was speeding because I was new to that area. But I trusted when he said you're going, 70 in a 50 zone, and I thought I was in a 70 zone. But in fact, I wasn't powerless. I mean, I had enough money to pay the ticket. There were some options. So if you are in trouble, let that kind of sink in. I'm not powerless. I have some options. And if literally you're not in trouble, notice that too. Let yourself feel that in your body. And sometimes the fear response is activated because we're being treated with disrespect, or somebody might be explaining something to us, but we have that sense that they have contempt for us. So those are situations where we're going to be activated in some kind of a response that's not cooperative. It's not, we're here together to figure this out. There's some kind of a power over situation happening. We're on the bottom. And then what do we do? So for the next few minutes, let's just play with that. Bring to mind the situation and really notice if you're feeling shame and inner critic, and keep coming back to grounding yourself. So as soon as you notice you're off into that, bring yourself back to this moment. Breathe. And notice if you're in a fight, flight, freeze response. A flight response might mean that your mind has wandered. You're not thinking about it really. You might be feeling angry. Let yourself kind of walk through what your response might be. If someone's treating you with contempt, what might your response be? And let yourself kind of back away so you can see yourself in the situation. See yourself, or you could say the words out loud. I deserve to be treated with respect. Your explanation doesn't make sense to me. Please say it a different way, or whatever you might say. Stay connected with your breath. And then come back into that feeling in your body now, that feeling of vulnerability or shame. If you're having an inner critic attack, you might say, "Stop. I don't want to hear it that way," or however you might work with that. Come back to how does that feel in your body as you're activating this in your mind? If there's a sensation here, we could sit with that for a bit. Where do you feel that feeling in your body? That kind of dread or whatever it is you're feeling, and feeling that kind of being stuck. I don't know if I have the power to say what I think, or maybe you're in freeze. What does that feel like in your body? And notice where the sensation is. Notice the qualities of the sensation. Notice if you've gone into kind of a shame posture, if you've slumped over, and bring yourself back upright. Lift your head. Take a few breaths. And as you're noticing that, you could mine it for meaning. What does it mean about me? Are there core deficiency beliefs being activated? Is there a sense of an age? This reminds me of, let that memory come forward from this base or foundation of I'm witnessing this in the present moment. I'm aware of my body, energy, sensations. I'm letting my breath be steady. See if you could connect in a kind way with your younger self who has that fear response. And even with ourself in this moment, sometimes when that happens, we're still taken back into a fight, flight, freeze. And then we can come out of it more quickly. But how do we do that? So, what would you say to that child? Or what would you just kind of sit with yourself? I'm strong enough to handle this. I know when something like this is activating my defense responses. I know how to reach out for the support I need. I know how to give myself that support. If I'm in a shame storm, I know how to come out of that. Let's take the last couple of minutes of the inquiry just really into that powerful awareness. I'm no longer a child. I can handle this. I can be kind and supportive as I do that. You might see yourself standing up to them. Sometimes we could get a redo, even if it's just in our own mind. You could visualize yourself there. You could actually put your body in that position. You could sit up straighter, look them in the eye, say what it was that didn't come to mind then, but that you could say now that your higher level brain is back online. You're not in the situation anymore where you were triggered into something like that. So take a moment to feel into that. Look them right in the eye if that's appropriate. Take a few breaths. Feel the steadiness of your pose, your posture. Say whatever it is you need to say. And then let all of that kind of settle for a moment. Let yourself come back into the room that you're in, into the present moment. Notice what it is you learned about yourself. What came to mind? Is this something that's fairly recent? Does it feel like it's really very possible for you to do this? Or does it feel like, I don't know, I keep getting triggered into that. I don't know what to do about that. Just notice how you're thinking about it. What's your relationship with it? Notice that. When I'm in a situation like that, I'll often think later what I could have said because I'm in freeze at the time. So it's really helpful to redo that in our mind at times and also to make a decision. Well, if it happens again, which very likely it will, we're probably going to be back in a similar situation at some point. I'll do this instead. Before I go, I'll prepare in this way. I will maybe have some notes with me so I can refer to them. If I'm feeling contempt from somebody, I will say this. So we can prepare ourselves so that we don't get kind of flashed back into that powerlessness of a child. Look around the room, feel your feet on the floor, take a few breaths.